In this tutorial I'll show you how to build center surfaces again, but this time using different method. So we'll begin by building our curves, and you're doing the same thing as before. You start with degree 1 and then you change it to degree 2. You shape it, and also if you wish you can align your curves with tangency or position. Right, so there is our center line. And now I'm going to build surfaces from this point at the end of the windshield, and you need to make sure that you snap it with control, otherwise this method will not work properly. So I moved it in top view now, and I'm shaping these two curves. They will be used as rail curves for our surfaces. So in front we have hood, and at the back we have side window surface. So I just mirrored it to the other side, and now I'm building generation curves, changing the degree and shaping it. So in F9 you just want to get a bit closer to blueprint, doesn't have to be super accurate, and then move the pivot to 0 and mirror it across Y. And now we can start building our surfaces. So I'm using rail surface tool with one rail and one generation curve, and we'll use these surfaces for projection later on, but now we just need to make sure that we have parallel option selected, because if not, you see what happens here. If you project this curve on the surface, it will not project it properly, so we want to make sure that the surface is covering whole curve. So for that reason I'm choosing parallel as sweep mode, and I'm just checking if I've done it on all of them. And make sure that you don't just mirror these surfaces, but you build them on each side, because that way you will keep the history on. If you just mirror it, you will lose the history on one side, and this method will not work properly. So now I'm projecting my curves onto the surfaces that we've just built, and I have match original option selected. We'll get some deviation, but we are not really worried about that at the moment. Just want to make sure that we have same curves on our surfaces as we have in the middle of a car. So they should have degree 2 only. And when you're doing this, it's a good idea to clean up the scene a bit, so move your curves onto separate layer, move the surfaces on separate layer, and so on. So that's what I'm doing here, because otherwise it will be a bit difficult to select what you want. If it will pile up and you'll get a million curves in your scene. So now that we have our curves projected, we can start connecting each side with a simple curve with degree 1. And same as before, you change the degree to 2. But before you shape it, this step is important. You need to make sure that you align it with position onto our projected curves. This will make sure that when you move the surface, the curve will also move, and it will automatically update so that it's connected to the curves that we projected on our surfaces. It will make a bit more sense later on. So now I'm building surfaces from all the curves that we've built. Again, you don't need explicit control, and you want to be selecting curves rather than edges, unless you're doing tangency continuity like I'm doing here. And once you've done that, you can... Actually, I'm going to hide these before I shape my center surfaces, and we'll switch off the points and turn the points on just for the generation curves. And now we'll do the same process as we did before. So we'll follow the same process. We'll select the middle point in perspective, and in side view we'll move our CVs until we achieve the crown that we want. And you can leave this end as it is, or you can give it a bit more crown at the end, again depending on what you want to do. Okay, so there it is. You can even use F9 to get a bit closer to blueprint, not just F6. And what we'll do now, I'll put curvature comb on center line, and I'll make sure that these CVs that we've just moved are perpendicular to our curves, and you want to follow the curvature comb when you're doing this. So right here, for example, it's just G0, it's not G1, but you can still guess where you need to move your CV. You want to be somewhere in the middle, in the gap between the curvature combs, and here they overlap, but again you want to be in the middle of that overlapping area. Then here you just need to align it with this line. This one is easy. And you do the same at the back. Okay, so that's our surfaces built. So now if I turn the points on these curves, remember that we used these curves to build our surfaces. So if I select these 2 points and center the pivot, I can now scale it closer. I can scale them closer to each other, and notice what the surfaces are doing. They are all updating automatically. So the advantage of this method is that you don't need to adjust each surface individually, but you just need to move a couple of points, and all of the surfaces that you've built will automatically update. So right now you could see that I also deleted history on our rail curves, because we don't really need it anymore. But if you grab both of the points and you move them forward or backwards, you can see the same thing happening, or even if you scale them closer to each other. But just one thing that you need to remember is to always center your pivot when you're selecting the opposite points on each side. And just in case that this method doesn't work for you, if the history is not updating, one thing that you need to remember is that it's most likely happening because you forgot to align some curves with G0, but otherwise this method should work.